The federal government is asking Australians
to immediately leave Ukraine
amid escalating tensions with Russia.
Our advice to those people is to leave Ukraine now.
We don't want our people being stuck in the middle of a potential war zone.
That urgent message coming as NATO forces move to deter the estimated 100,000 Russian troops gathered on the Ukrainian border.
We need to make it very clear to the Kremlin, to Russia, that would be a disastrous step. Invading Ukraine is going to be a painful, violent and bloody business.
Each side accusing the other of hastening the march to war.
We are seeing statements from the North Atlantic Alliance about more troops, pulling forces and assets onto the eastern flank. All of it is causing tensions to rise.
Should diplomacy fail, we are very well advanced in the preparation of responses to a potential Russian aggression.
So how did it come to this? Until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Moscow exerted direct control over Ukraine. Since then, Ukraine's acted as a buffer between Russia and Europe. But if it joins NATO, as is expected, Russia would suddenly have the world's most powerful military alliance on its doorstep. It's believed that Vladimir Putin would rather go to war than let that happen.
He's laying the groundwork for an invasion because he doesn't believe that Ukraine is a sovereign nation.
And having annexed Crimea, a Ukrainian territory, in 2014, there's no reason to believe Russia is bluffing.
The intelligence is pretty gloomy on this point. There is certainly a very, very large array of Russian forces.
Hogy mi nem akarunk újabb hidegháborút.
Stefan Romaniu is chair of the Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisations. Stefan, no doubt you have family and friends in Ukraine. What are they saying about the situation right now?
Look, I think the situation in Ukraine is very, very dangerous. People are worried and people are expecting that there'll be some sort of a diplomatic relation opportunity to fix this situation and that Putin will see reason. The last thing anybody wants war, but it looks like it's imminent because Mr. Putin continues to violate international rules.
Our government has warned Australians to get out as soon as possible. Do you agree?
We're in touch with the people that we know and asking them to assess the situation and take appropriate action. We've also spoken to DFAT today. They are taking the precautious way. It's cautious in so much as it's best to get people out now than have to worry about that later when there might be problem with communication and so on. So we've taken that step.
Stefan, sadly, you said you believe war is imminent. Do you think, how imminent? Are we talking hours, days, weeks?
Look, I think Mr. Putin needs to get a very, very strong message, which I think he's now starting to get. If he feels that the West or the international community who aspire to democracy, sovereignty, territorial integrity, all those things that he doesn't do, if he feels that there's a foot off the pedal, I think he'll act. At the moment, I think the fact that the international community is sticking together, it is being very, very strong in saying if you invade Ukraine, there will be repercussions. And I think it's important to note that we're not only talking about sanctions. I think one of the things that we often get bluffed by is, we'll have sanctions. Well, the sanctions really helped Ukraine with the annexation of Crimea, didn't it? We saw yesterday that the Minister for Defence, Mr. Alexei Reznikov of Ukraine, is very, very strong, an army of 460,000, 250,000 reservists. Will they stop Russian invasion? No, but they'll certainly give it a good fight.
Yes, NATO is talking tough, but they didn't do anything when it came to Crimea. Do you really think they'll do something this time?
Think about the other part of this. Let's say that Russia invades. Let's say that the world does nothing. What do you think China might do? China ends up saying, well, OK, these guys talk a whole lot of hot air, but they don't act. Ukrainians voted for independence. They're an independent state. Any annexation, any boots on the ground on Ukrainian soil is, I think, seen as a threat, not just to Ukraine, but to Europe and internationally. But I think ultimately now the discussions have to be with Ukraine. Oftentimes there are discussions without Ukraine. We all remember the Budapest Convention. Ukraine gave up its nuclear arms and was told that any time it would be under threat, it would be defended. Well, that moment of truth has come.
Stefan, we appreciate your insights. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
The modern history of this is quite interesting because when the USSR collapsed, the assumption from Russia was that the Ukraine would always be an ally because they've got similar cultural values. But of course, once Russia stopped being a democracy post the collapse of the USSR and post Yeltsin, then they were in a different situation to the Ukraine. They don't want to take it over the way they did Crimea. They want it to stay as its own country, but they want it to be a puppet state, essentially, that doesn't do Western bidding.
Is this possibly a cautionary tale that comedians should not be elected as presidents of countries? Because the comedian won the election in Ukraine, and he's still the president, isn't he?
Have you got Ukrainian citizenship? I mean, maybe there's an option there.
No, but don't vote for comedians, OK? Comedians just tell jokes.